Another window is going to be wasted, and what I thought was going to be the moment of, all right, let's go, is now being postponed again. Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This show will be talking Potch Watch, the U.S. men's national team roster, Atlanta changes, cheating Wolverines, Hope solo, Suarez goodbye, Ronaldo keeping on, Ballon d'Or, and so much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Wednesday, September 4th in the year 2024?
I'm doing well, and it's great to have you back in studio.
Thank you so much. Yes. So let's see. How far did I go here across country? And another thank you to everybody behind the scenes for making it easy to do the shows on the road. Like 3,300 miles and 5 days, 15 states, including, let's see, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and of course, California. And I've done this a bunch of times. It never gets old. It gives you an incredible and profound appreciation for the size of our country and the diversity, especially when it comes to the geography of our country. Just wonderful. And, as I mentioned, for those that have listened and watched over the last couple of weeks, I did it with my teenage son. And it really wouldn't have mattered where we went. It was just fun to be with him, to go across country. And at times he rolled his eyes. But, if you get the opportunity alone or with anybody that you like or love, definitely do it. So it was fun, and I would recommend it to anybody. So, have you watched anything, my friend?
Can I give away the fact that we didn't actually tape our Landon Donovan interview on Labor Day? We did it a few days earlier and ran it on Labor Day.
Yeah, that's fine. And by the way, you should go back and watch and listen to the Landon Donovan interview, because he brings it as he does time and time again, and it was really interested to hear him talk about his new job down there in San Diego, but also soccer in general.
So I spent Labor Day weekend in Las Vegas, had a fantastic time. I attended a Nas concert at the Encore Theater on Saturday night, which was incredible. One of the best concert experiences of my life, to watch my favorite artist perform. I had incredible seats. I have a nice hookup at that casino. So center, 5 rows back. He was right there. It was absolutely incredible.
What does Nas close the set with? What's his his encore? Does he have an encore? Does he go off and then come back on and do that kind of stuff?
So the concert was to mark the 30-year anniversary of his legendary debut, Illmatic. So first he performed that entire album with the Las Vegas Symphony, and that was incredible. And then afterwards, he did a regular show. His DJ was there as well, and he performed hits from other albums. And he tends to close his concerts now with One Mic, which is a song from the Stillmatic album, which is a very dramatic.
Worthy closer? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Great song. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
You know what I did, too, which I've always wanted to do in Vegas, and I finally got around to it?
What'd you do?
I went to the Mob Museum, which is about 15 minutes off the Strip. It is excellent. You learn so much about not only the history of the mafia, but the history of Las Vegas and how they intertwine, and Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky and all that. I spent 4 hours there. I loved it. I could go back. It's very well done. I highly recommend it.
I love it. Well, I got back and obviously had been on the road for the week. And so what happens oftentimes is things accumulate that you haven't watched. And so there was a plethora, if you will, of content that had amassed over there on the Netflix machine. And so I killed it. And so 3 different things that I watched. One, I'm going to save to the end of the show, and that is the Hope Solo documentary over there, and it's going to get its own little ending and segment. 2, the murder of Steve McNair, and we have a lot of Tennessee folks here in the building and here in when it comes to the State of the Union. From a crime perspective and a true crime connoisseur perspective, didn't live up to it. But I was interested actually in a lot of the sports perspective, the quarterback for the Titans. Is that what they're called over there?
Correct, yeah.
The quarterback for the Titans and where he came from and how rugged he was and what a big star he was for Tennessee, not necessarily the rest of the country, but it gave me a greater appreciation for him as an athlete. And then I also watched Sign Stealer. Now, this is about the cheater over there in Michigan, the Wolverines of Michigan, your Wolverines of Michigan that got dinged and the controversy surrounding it. Mosse, if I didn't know that I was watching an actual documentary when I was watching Sign Stealer over there on Netflix, I would have thought that this was a mockumentary. I would have thought that Christopher Guest was going to show up at one point, all right? And look, I know I'm not a big football fan, and from a soccer perspective, we deserve plenty of the ridicule and the criticism and the laughter that comes our way. And I think we own it. And football is the same way. But this was a ridiculous film. At times I was saying this can't be true. What is going on here? I don't know if you got the same type of reaction. And again, my wife is a huge Buckeye fan. All right, we did not watch it together, but it just seemed I was incredulous throughout it all that this was actually being talked about in such a serious way. In that it was almost as if the entire situation was being mocked.
Does your wife know Brohio, who appeared in the documentary, the Ohio State fan with the ski mask?
The guy with the ski mask? I mean, the whole thing is just stupid, okay? And I know people are out there that take it very, very seriously, including the Buckeye fans out there. But either it is serious and either it is something that is worthy or it isn't. There's no in between. And I can't believe, I found myself going, this cannot be true. I am being put on here right now watching this mockumentary.
Yeah, the only part where you felt like everybody was able to take a step back and realize the absurdity of it was when they went through all the memes in the internet about the whole Connor Stallion, and you're like, oh, okay, people get that this is kind of a joke, but then they immediately switch back to a serious tone, and you're right, this was treated as if this was like some murder investigation and the most consequential crime ever committed.
I'm not saying they didn't cheat, okay, but it turned it into this whole other level. All right, let's. Are you ready to light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
All right, where shall we start?
An international break is upon us. The U.S. men have 2 friendlies coming up. On Saturday, they will face Canada in Kansas City. Then Tuesday, New Zealand in Cincinnati. These will be the first U.S. senior games since the disastrous Copa America campaign, which cost Greg Berhalter his job. We know Mauricio Pochettino will be the replacement, but as of this taping, Wednesday afternoon, he has not officially signed. So under 20 boss Mikey Veras will coach the team on an interim basis. I'll go through the roster in a minute, but overall thoughts on these 2 games.
Okay, so this was supposed to be the new beginning. This was supposed to be after the incredible failure of the summer and the firing of Greg Berhalter, this turning of a page. And again, I think I mentioned this in previous pods right now. As we sit here recording this, we are 645 days, I think, away from the 2026 World Cup. And after this week, we are in this FIFA window right now. There will be 9 FIFA international windows, which equates to 18 games. And of course, next summer, where we will have a Gold Cup, and who knows, maybe another 7 games. But let's be honest, few of those will be against high quality opponents. But that's what is left in terms of the preparation for the 26 World Cup. And so yet another window is going to be, I'm going to say wasted. Maybe that's a little harsh, but another window is going to be wasted. And what I thought was going to be the moment of, all right, let's go, is now being postponed again, because to your point, they still haven't officially named Mauricio Pochettino. And I would have liked for him to have used this. Now, he might be doing things behind the scenes. That's very, very possible. But don't ask me to care about Mikey Veras. That's his name, right?
Correct.
Okay. Don't ask me to care about Mikey Veras and what he is doing with this national team.
Well, and the shame of it is if Berhalter was still the coach or Pochettino had already stepped in, a game against Canada and Jesse Marsch would have had some real juice because of their semifinal run at the Copa America. And speaking of cheating scandals, everything that's going on with Canada. But to your point, with Mikey Veras on the bench, I don't know that this game has that much significance.
Do you think that the United States Federation did not want Pochettino's first game to be against Canada and the possible embarrassment that would happen?
No, I don't think that was a part of it.
Really?
You think they're stalling him stepping in to avoid facing mighty Canada and New Zealand?
I mean, if his first game in charge ends up being this team losing to Canada, which is certainly possible given the strength of Canada and where they are right now, they're flying under Jesse Marsh. That would not be a good look for him or for the Federation. So I don't know. Maybe I have my tinfoil on here. All right, let's get into some of the
After watching Sign Stealer, you've got conspiracy.
That's true. That's true.
So to go through the roster, there are some notable absences. Timmy Weah, Tyler Adams, and Sergiño Dest all out injured, while Weston, McKennie, Jedi Robinson, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and Tanner Tessman weren't called up because of minor ailments and because this time was, I guess, better spent with their clubs. It was deemed. I don't know what old man on the porch Alexi Lalas thinks of that, players skipping international games. But in terms of the roster, 24 names, 4 goalkeepers, Matt Turner, Ethan Horvath, Patrick Schulte, and young Diego Kochen, a teenager who's part of the Barcelona B setup. Incidentally, Matt Turner now plays for Crystal Palace. He got himself a move from Forest to Palace late in the window. He's projected to be the number 2, but he'll try to challenge Dean Henderson for the starting job. I suspect he'll start these games for the U.S.
Why do you suspect that? I mean, is this not a proving ground or a test for others out there? I mean, I look, if this was a meaningful game, then not that it's not meaningful, but yeah, I would understand why. Matt Turner, again, is not necessarily a starter when he is moving on here to Crystal Palace. Don't know much about Diego Kochen. Is that how we're going to pronounce it?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good enough. If he makes the ultimate roster here, because they have 4 goalkeepers, and we've seen Ethan Horvath, we've seen Patrick Schulte, and obviously we've seen Matt Turner. I think the real interest for me, if I have to come up with some interesting things, it's any type of new names that are going to be used. And when I say used, not just on the roster, but on the field. So from a defender standpoint, Marlon Fossey from Standard Liège, because he plays right back, and there's a potential there, especially with Dest continuing to be out with his injury, and I'm still not sold necessarily on Scally on that right-hand side. And then, more importantly for me, up top, which that number 9 position still looms large, we finally have kind of everybody, and yes, they are usual suspects, but everybody is healthy up top. So those would be the 2 things that I would be looking at.
Just to amend what I said, I think Turner starts against Canada, but you're right. I could see another one of the goalkeepers starting against New Zealand. And yeah, at the back, you've got neither Jedi Robinson or Sergiño Dest, so a possibility for some new players to emerge. Marlon Fossey, 25-year-old Standard Liège, him and Scally are the right backs. Christopher Lund and Caleb Wiley are the left backs. And then you've got 4 center backs, Tim Ream, who we know is now in MLS, Chris Richards, Mackenzie, and Austin Trusty. So how do you see that? I'm actually somewhat surprised Tim Ream is on this list. I thought maybe it might be time to move on from him, but I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to learn anything new about these players. Again, if and when the new coach comes in, I think part of their job, if it's Pochettino, fine, is to make the players that we have better, individually and collectively. I don't think we're necessarily going to see that. Maybe there is a breath of fresh air and a release that happens in a new camp, even though the head coach isn't there. But I'm not going to learn anything new about Tim Ream.
I agree. Trusty's a guy I'm curious to see. He just moved from Sheffield United to Celtic, but I continue to say that center back is the most underwhelming position in the whole talent pool. In the midfield with no McKennie or Adams, it's an opportunity for Johnny Cardoso. He's in there along with Yunus Musa, Luca De La Torre, Aiden Morris, and then Gio Reyna and Malik Tillman presumably are your 10s.
What's the deal with Johnny right now? What's going on there with your friend?
Yeah, so Real Betis acquired Giovanni Lo Celso, Argentinian midfielder from Tottenham, and as part of the deal, Tottenham obtained first option on Johnny Cardoso. Now, what that means, I had to do some digging here, but what that means is that next summer, there's a 2-week window where Tottenham can sign Johnny Cardoso for £21 million. So they'll have this exclusive 2-week window where if they want to activate that option, they can have him for £21 million. Once that 2 weeks goes by, then it's done.
But the 2-week window is not an official designated window from FIFA or anything like that. It's just put into a contractual
just agreed
situation
to between
say
the clubs.
this is a window.
So it could be something, it could be nothing. It depends on what kind of season Johnny has at Betis and what Tottenham's needs are next summer. We'll see. But that was a curious clause to include in that Lo Celso
But it's a
deal.
clause that signifies his value.
Yeah,
so it's a good thing.
They clearly like him as a player because they wouldn't have inserted that clause otherwise.
All right. Up top, knock on wood, we've, Josh Sargent, who's scoring goals, is healthy and there. And I guess, only one of these guys between Flo, Ricardo Pepi, who's there, and Josh Sargent can start.
Honestly, we talked about this this summer. Now, the roster got expanded to 26, so it wasn't that big of an issue. But I do find it odd that you have 3 center forwards plus Haji Wright, who we know can play at center forward. At some point, they're going to have to make a decision, probably pick 2 out of 3 of Balogun, Pepi, and Sargent. Just from a roster composition standpoint, in any kind of short tournament scenario, I don't know that you need to carry 3 center forwards plus Haji Wright, who's nominally a winger but can play as a center
Someone's
forward.
an odd man out at some point.
Yeah.
To get back to your point about players not here because it could mess up their club situation. I get that you lose the battle and win the war if you are looking at you want your players playing. You want them playing consistently. I just told you how few windows you have and how few games you have, and so therefore a player playing is more valuable to you. But in this case, you're missing a window, but you're not missing a window with the actual coach. So I'm okay with this one. Had Pochettino been the coach, I think it would have been problematic. And again, it's a delicate balance that federations and obviously coaches and technical directors and all that kind of stuff have to play, and the relationship that you have with the club. And you don't want to do anything that's going to screw up a player from a club perspective, especially when they're new to the club, that is going to hurt them and therefore devalue the player for when you finally get them to the national team. I get that.
I do wonder, Reina is listed as a midfielder, but with Timmy Weah out, I could see Reina playing as a winger in one of these games, maybe starting Pulisic, Reina, and Balogun as your front 3, and maybe Tillman as the 10 with Johnny and Yunus Musa sitting. I just think, now would be the time to take advantage of that Gio Reyna flexibility. I don't think he should be tethered to that number 10 position.
Do you look at Haji Wright as a 9 or as a winger?
It's kind of a hybrid. I mean,
Yeah.
he keeps getting called up as a winger, but I think he's just as much a 9 as he is a winger. And we should mention on Gio, late in the window, Eric Winalda's former club, Bochum, evidently wanted to take him on loan, and Dortmund said no. They decided they either were going to sell him permanently this summer or keep him. So Gio ends up sticking around with Dortmund.
All right, quickly, before we move on, I guess this would be for the next window, but if it's Pochettino, he comes in. Oftentimes you see the new coach boost, right? And what is that? How does that manifest? Well, you have players that have been around, and there's a new sheriff in town. And we've all, as players, been there where there is a new coach. And you want to come in. It doesn't matter how long you've been there. You want to make sure that you put your best foot forward and that you impress from the start. And so players that either have been out of it, now they have an opportunity to get back into it. And players that have been in and have been the chosen ones out there, they got to prove that they are worth it. And this is a good thing. This is oftentimes why you make a change, because the players weren't motivated enough. And we've seen the players talk about what Greg Berhalter had done, but then what hadn't been done. And you hope that it lights a fire going forward for all these players in that next window.
The next window, if those happen to be Pochettino's first 2 games, it's against Panama and Austin, against Mexico and Guadalajara. So that's a tasty one for Pochettino to manage. We should note we'll be doing spaces after each of these games in this window, against Canada on Saturday and New Zealand on Tuesday.
Live over there on X. We'll have spaces. They'll show up in your feed. So if you're not on X, it's okay. But we will be doing that for the instant reaction to these games.
Speaking of Mexico, they face the same opponents in reverse. They will battle New Zealand at the Rose Bowl and then Canada at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. Javier Aguirre taking charge yet again. No Chucky Lozano in the squad. Edson Alvarez out injured, but there are some names of note. We'll see if Mexico can get back on track. I mentioned this previously on the pod. I'm going to reiterate it. Jesse Marsch only actually has 1 win in 8 games as Canada boss. Now, the there is this perception that he's off to a strong start because you look at the quality of opposition, to be fair to him. It's France, Netherlands, Argentina twice, Uruguay, and also they did get to the semifinals of the Copa America. But it is only one win in 8 games. If he were to lose to the U.S. and Mexico in this window, and all of a sudden now it's only 1 win in 10 and losses to the 2 other arch rivals in your region, I wonder if that narrative will start to change a little bit about whether Jesse Marsch has actually made a good start to life on the Canada bench.
Well, all that matters is results, and it was a successful summer for Jesse Marsch relative to Copa America. The realities of wins and losses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess they're important, but nobody ultimately remembers what your record is. They just remember where you finished.
It is interesting, the venues, Rose Bowl and AT&T Stadium, and I'm sure they'll pack both. Boy, Mexico, regardless of their struggles, they continue to be just a massive draw here in the U.S.
Oh, how dare you? I mean, the Kiwi draw here in Los Angeles. All right, what else do we got going, Mosse?
All right, another edition of the UEFA Nations League also gets underway in this window.
Don't I know it? I know it. I'm ready for it, baby.
Tournament we cover here at Fox. Spain won the last edition in the summer of 2023. They beat Croatia on penalties in the final. They're obviously coming off a great summer where they won the Euros and the Olympic gold medal. They're flying high. In this window, they are away to Serbia and away to Switzerland. The group of death in League A of the UEFA Nations League contains France, Italy, Belgium, and Israel. France in this window will host Italy and Belgium, 2 very tasty games there. France, Italy, obviously a rematch of the 2006 World Cup final, Zidane headbutt, etc. We have 4 games on FS1, doubleheaders both Saturday and Sunday. You're involved both days. On Saturday, Faroe Islands, North Macedonia. We'll be going to you for an in-depth tactical breakdown of both those teams. Are you ready?
Oh, I can't wait. As we were saying off air, I'm sure there will be the tried and true, this 11, insert coach's name here, classic 11 from insert coach's name here. Now, I'm looking forward to get back to doing some work here this weekend. My friend Rob Stone will be around one of those days. Obviously, John Strong and Stu, and it's going to be fun.
Also on Saturday, I'm excited about this one. The Republic of Ireland will host England. As a history buff, I obviously know all about the history between these 2 nations, all the political undertones here going back more than 800 years to the days of Henry II. Our good friend Warren Barton made his international debut in 1995 in a Republic of Ireland-England match, which was abandoned in the first half due to crowd trouble. So hopefully everybody behaves themselves here. England without a coach. They have not replaced Gareth Southgate. Lee Cardsley will coach them on an interim basis. He's, ironically enough, a former Republic of Ireland international.
Ooh.
While the Republic of Ireland are coached by our old friend Heimir Hallgrimsson, who recently coached Jamaica and previously coached Iceland, knocked England out of Euro 2016. So this should be a fun one in Dublin.
So of these games here, you mentioned Spain. This has to culminate at a certain point in winning the World Cup, right? This incredible resurgence. So that's one of the reasons. I mean, obviously there's the tournaments that they are playing in, but this is also a long-term type of look, especially as you would get close to 26. Italy, again, what is Italy right now, given their futility relative to the World Cup? And can they kind of rebound and use this next year and a half more, or almost 2 years, to get back to a World Cup and do that kind of stuff? France is France.
If Italy get drilled by France, I'm going to email Giorgio Chiellini poking fun at him. It'll be a test of whether we can maintain any sort of relationship post working together this summer. Do you think Giorgio will reply to my email?
I think so. I think he will take your ribbing in the way that it was intended.
Then Sunday, we have also doubleheader on FS1, Denmark, Serbia, and then Portugal hosting Scotland. Cristiano Ronaldo is in the squad, which I find ludicrous. 39 years old. We saw what happened at the Euros, and even going back to the last World Cup, it's now more than 700 minutes without a goal at a major tournament for him. The fact that he can't bring himself to walk away, he was defiant in the press conference, still wants to play the next World Cup, but that I think your bigger issue is with Roberto Martinez not having the spine to leave him out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it that this is a living legend and, arguably the best player ever to play the game, and he comes with cachet, and he comes with respect, and let's be honest, he comes with power. But again, you hired Roberto Martinez in a moment where it was the perfect time to say, no, we are moving in a different direction. And so, Roberto Martinez, you made your own bed, as did the Federation. All right? If this is now an albatross around your neck, you have no one to blame but yourself, because there was a point when you could have cut it off and you didn't. And if you are the coach of this team and your job depends on winning, then do it now. But no, they're going to let him continue on. I will say, though, it's because you're not ageist, Mosse, right? This is because you feel that he is detrimental to the team in terms of his abilities at this point at 39 years old.
Correct. If he was still scoring goals against elite opposition in major tournaments, that I don't care how old he is, you still play him. But I think we've seen evidence that he's now hurting the team more than he's helping.
Got it. All right.
And we should note some big news today. The short list came out for the Ballon d'Or, both men and women. And for the first time since 2003, neither Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi made the short list. We just talked about Ronaldo. In Messi's case, it's significant because this is the first year where he's been a full-blown MLS player, where the period of time the voters are told to consider fully encompasses him being an Inter Miami player. So that is unfortunate. He did win the Copa America. You thought that might have gotten him on the short list. It didn't. I don't know. What do you read into that?
I mean, it's an ouch moment for both MLS and the Saudi League. Let's be honest. After over 20 years where at least one of them has been on the list, we come to find ourselves here in 2024 for the first time where they aren't, and it coincides with the year that they both have gone on to leave Europe and go to Saudi and MLS respectively. So not a great message out there, but I don't think wrong necessarily. Messi, I think you have much more of an argument that he certainly can and should be there as opposed to Cristiano.
The winner will be announced late October. The favorites are thought to be Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, and Rodri, who obviously won the Premier League with Man City and the Euros with Spain. I think any of those would be worthy winners. Obviously, I hope Vinicius wins it, but if they gave it to Jude Bellingham or Rodri, I could have absolutely no argument. On the women's side, 5 Americans nominated: Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman, Mal Swanson, Lindsey Horan, and Alyssa Nair. The fact that Naomi Girma is not one of them is ludicrous to me, and frankly perpetuates this feeling that they still don't take the women's awards all that seriously. They just kind of slap some list together, because I'm sorry, she is not only the best defender in the world, she is in the conversation for me for best player in the world. And the fact that she doesn't crack a short list of 30 is mind-blowing.
It's insane. It's insane. And to your point, it's a combination of, and it may be, well, if it is, then it's an incredible indictment on, the Ballon d'Or. But if it isn't, and to your point, they don't care, or maybe even worse, they don't know, that's just ridiculous. All right. And I know we come at it from a red, white, and blue perspective here, but anybody that has watched women's soccer over the last year will recognize how important Naomi Girma is, how good she is. And there is not a team or a country in the world that wouldn't love to have Naomi Girma as part of their program here. So to your point, it's an absolute travesty that she is not on this list, because not only does she deserve to be on the list, but if and when she is on the list, she automatically goes to the top as far as I'm concerned. So ridiculous.
I mentioned Vinicius is a major candidate on the men's side. The Copa America hurt him, though. Remember, he has this issue where he doesn't play as well for Brazil as he does for Real Madrid. He'll try to set that right in this window as we transition to South American World Cup qualifying. Brazil home to Ecuador and away to Paraguay. Now, believe it or not, Endrick is already old news. Ooh. There's another Palmeiras teenager. Palmeiras, the same club that produced Endrick, have unearthed another gem. 17-year-old Estevão. He is a left-footed, wiry winger who plays on the right, kind of like the Brazilian Lamine Yamal. Ooh. And he was called up for these games. If he steps on the field against Ecuador, he'll become the 5th youngest player in Brazil history. If he scores, he'd become the 3rd youngest scorer, moving ahead of players like Ronaldo and Endrick. So he is a very talented player. I'm excited to see him. But I said this after the Copa America elimination to Uruguay. I'll repeat it. Brazil is suffering from this savior complex right now. We keep waiting for some attacking star to show up and through his individual brilliance to just lift the whole team. And in the meantime, nothing solid is being built in the midfield at the back. He selected a lot of the same players from the Copa America, so I expect the midfield play to be the same, the collective play to be the same, and I think it's going to be hard for any star, whether it's Vinicius or this kid or Endrick, to shine if you're not given sort of a proper platform to do so.
I don't understand what you're talking about when you talk about the platform. I mean, if you have really, really good players, you promote them.
But I think
and you get excited about them. Why are you pooping on all this?
You need a midfield that's good enough to get them the ball in good positions and to maintain possession. And you saw during the Copa America, Brazil really struggled with that. It was so ragged. And
so you're saying they're not developing those other positions. They're only developing the sexy attacking type of positions, which is all fine and well. But if you don't have the
I will say, though, Brazil, nothing's easy in CONMEBOL, and the way Brazil are playing, they would struggle against the Fox Soccer intramural team. But the stretch coming up here in this window, home against Ecuador, away to Paraguay. Next window, away to Chile, home to Peru. And even the first game in the November window is away to Venezuela. Those are 5 games where we need to clean up there, win 3 or 4 of those, get ourselves comfortably in the qualification places,
bank them,
and improve our performances a bit. If when the dust settles on all those games I just mentioned, Brazil is still looking like a mess and struggling to get results and still not safely in the qualification places, I'm actually going to start to get really worried because the last stretch of games is tough. It's away to Argentina, away to Bolivia and La Paz, away to Ecuador and Quito. You're dealing with altitude in those places. So this is the stretch here for Brazil to right the ship.
How do you say stop crying in Portuguese?
Para de chorar.
Para de chorar. Para de chorar. Good God. I feel so bad for poor little Brazil. They're going to be fine. Wow. Hey, can you imagine if Brazil doesn't qualify for a World Cup that has 48 teams?
That's what I'm saying. It's not outside
well, from
the
a
realm of
Fox perspective, we do not want that to happen, obviously.
No such worries for Argentina, who are atop the standings. No Messi this window. They are home to Chile and away to Colombia in a rematch of the Copa America final. That might be the best international game of this entire window. France, Italy, France, Belgium, very good too. But I'm really excited about that one. Colombia, Argentina, and Barranquilla should be fantastic.
Speaking of World Cup qualifying and South American clubs and South American legends, we need to pour one out here.
Well, you know, it's funny. When CONMEBOL announced the suspensions after that Colombia-Uruguay incident in the Copa America and Darwin Núñez got 5 games, I came on here and said, wow, this has major Luis Suarez implications. He's going to have to log a lot of minutes in the upcoming games that could affect his availability for Inter Miami. I went home that day feeling good about myself. I made a really smart point about Luis Suarez in Uruguay. And then right after that, he announces he's retiring from international play. So it's all a moot point. His last game will be the first game in this window against Paraguay. Now, you find it odd that he's retiring mid-window.
I'm assuming that the first game's at home and the second game's away. Okay, so I understand it, but you know the window's the window, so it just seems. Well, I find it strange that you're retiring in the middle of a window. I also find it strange that you're retiring in the middle of World Cup qualifying. And by the way, plenty of people have to raise their hand, including me, when it comes to the prolific, output of Luis Suarez over there at Inter Miami. He has been absolutely incredible. Whatever physical problems he has, knee-wise, he has overcome them. And he has been money for Inter Miami. So he's still scoring goals. He's still playing well. And he picked this moment, I get it. The travel is what it is. But it just seems like a strange moment for you to decide, no, I'm out. But after you get over that, then you got to celebrate one of the great goal scorers in history and one of the great personalities on the field, and I guess off the field too, when it comes to the game. And again, any team in the world would love to have a Luis Suarez. From the U.S. men's national team perspective, what we wouldn't give to have a Luis Suarez who not only scores the goals, but scores the goals when everybody is looking at him. Not only scores the goals when everybody's looking at him, but takes so much attention and pressure off of others so that others can do work. Not only does that, but also, not for nothing, but if you're in a bar fight, you want Luis Suarez on your team. And so there's that dog in him that is just this wonderful, wonderful combination that anybody wants on their team. And I know from an opposition perspective, he may drive you crazy, but it's one of these situations. Anybody that's played, a center back, you have this begrudging respect for players like Luis Suarez because they give as much as they take. And while you hate them in the moment, you want them on your team.
There are actually some MLS games going on this weekend in the midst of all this international play. We highlighted a couple of them. Columbus will host Seattle. You just mentioned Luis Suarez. I think Columbus might be the only real threat to Inter Miami for the Supporters Shield. They have some games in hand. If they win those, they could cut it down to 4, and then they host Inter Miami in early October. Seattle just looking to make the playoffs in the West.
Seattle, man. Okay, so see, when it comes to Columbus, I think you're absolutely right in that while I think you could certainly make an argument that they are the cream of the crop. And I know with all due respect to Inter Miami, and the points type of thing, this is a juggernaut of a Columbus team. This is a team that even with the parity that exists in MLS, they step on the field and they entertain, but more importantly, they win their games. And they are to be feared. And as we know, in MLS, there are almost 2 seasons. There's your regular season, and then there's the playoff season. And I'm not saying that Columbus is Columbus is hiding by any stretch of the imagination. Everybody knows who they are, but that's not a team that I would want to face come the playoffs. So even if they don't pip Miami ultimately for the Eastern Conference, I still think that this is a team that I just would not want to face when come playoff time.
Houston will host LAFC. Houston won away to LAFC 2-0 last weekend. Now they get them at home. LAFC currently second in the West. And the game after this is El Tráfico against the Galaxy, who are in first place. So this is an interesting stretch for LAFC.
Yeah, LAFC just seems to be I just don't know ultimately how they're good, but I'm not sure they're great. And you look at this standings now with the Galaxy in first and then LAFC right now. I think the Galaxy, even sitting in first, are just sitting back and saying, all right, yeah, you've had our number for a while and you've had a lot of the attention, talking about LAFC, but the fear factor of LAFC, I think, has dissipated a little bit. I'm not saying they're not dangerous, and I'm not saying you can't get your ass kicked by LAFC, but this will be interesting. Going to Houston, a team that on paper they should beat and probably will beat, but if they start to show problems continuing forward, then others are going to smell that blood. And whether it's your Salt Lakes or even your Colorados and stuff like that going forward when it comes to the Western Conference.
And no word yet on whether we're going to hire a finals coach. Remember, Soccer Thoughts suggested that on our last pod. But
exactly.
I haven't heard anything from that.
Exactly. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right. Nice long segment to begin the pod. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get to some Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. And keep in mind that our State of the Union podcast handle out there on the social media platforms is SOTU with Alexi, or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
We have a couple of questions on X. First up, Rick Atkinson asks, thoughts on Boca out at Atlanta United?
So Carlos Bocanegra, former U.S. men's national team player and captain, wonderful player, went into the front office, and since I think 2015 has been with Atlanta United as technical director and vice president over there. And he has overseen some great success on the field, some great success off the field in terms of the business that they have done. But he's also overseen some, relative to the expectations of Atlanta, some great failures. And, some not so great business when it comes to what they have done in terms of transfers and all that kind of stuff. We find out today that his contract will not be renewed, and so they will be going on without him, as it were. I think I'm surprised that Carlos Bocanegra has lasted this long at Atlanta United, given the poor results, both on and off the field, that he has, by all accounts, been responsible for. I will say that this now puts Garth Lagerwey, who came over from Seattle and is now in charge of everything and seems to be kind of fashioning it as he wants going forward, it puts him on the clock and to a certain extent on the hot seat with whatever hires he makes. If he does, it seems like he is going to assume some of the responsibilities, but he might make other hires. But ultimately, the success of Atlanta United relative to the great success that they had when they started in Major League Soccer, that's what it's going to be measured against. And if and when that doesn't go well, that's not going to bode well for Garth Lagerwey. But I think he recognized that the Bocanegra era had run its course, and he wants to do some things differently. Keep in mind that, Atlanta United came in with all guns blazing to MLS, both on and off the field, and the Miguel Almiron type of situation, and the selling of players and the buying of players and the money, especially relative to other teams, that has been spent, and the business that has been done with the massive crowds that they get, the branding of that team in Atlanta. And while Atlanta certainly has had a history of soccer, this took it to a whole nother level with Arthur Blank and what he has done. And when I talk about people doing big, bold things, Arthur Blank and this Atlanta United team, they have done that. But with that comes higher expectations. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the league, and it's a good thing in this case for that team. But when you don't live up to them, as they haven't of late, there are going to be changes. And Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately?
We talk about MLS becoming a league that signs young South American players. Atlanta was really the first to catch on to that strategy with Almiron and Joseph Martinez, and they had great success. They won MLS Cup. I remember the talk around then that was MLS 2.0. Atlanta was spearheading this new era. So whatever you want to say about them, they were a very important franchise in the evolution of MLS because it sort of sent the league down that path, which I think has been to the benefit of the league as a whole.
I think they also established a relevance and a credibility for South Americans using Major League Soccer, and in this case, using Atlanta. And look, all of that matters, all right? It's not going to happen overnight. So I think they deserve a tremendous amount of credit for, they didn't open up the gateway, but I think they made it easier, and I think they made it more acceptable going forward. And even with the misses, you're going to have misses no matter what. It's not always a sure thing. But they continue to spend money, and big money relative to the rest of the league. And so I like that. I like people. I mean, we have fun spending other people's money, but that they do it, they deserve credit for doing that. And I hope they continue to do that under Garth Lagerwey going forward.
Another question on X at Doug J2 asks, seems kind of silly to build a temporary stadium rather than playing at Hard Rock Stadium temporarily. He's obviously alluding to Inter Miami.
Yeah, so Inter Miami, actually, today they came out with a video, really nicely done video, kind of trumpeting what is going to happen in 2026, which is their new permanent stadium, which is going to happen in Miami as opposed to Fort Lauderdale, where they are right now. Also should be said, speaking of spending money, that they built their own temporary stadium where Lockhart Stadium used to be there in Fort Lauderdale. And this is a temporary venue, and it's a great stadium. That they deserve credit for doing that. There was a question, that you just read about why didn't they play in Hard Rock and do that kind of stuff. Well, a couple of things. In a temporary, smaller venue, Inter Miami has been able to very successfully create additional value and a premium on those tickets due to the fact that there is limited capacity in this stadium. The smaller stadium size also creates a more intimate experience, and we've talked about this in MLS for a long time, as opposed to the bigger stadiums. And I'm not saying that they couldn't fill them, especially with Messi, but this unique atmosphere that they have right now, and again, the premium for getting a ticket to see this team, and obviously Messi is a huge part of that. That's good. And then there's the, also the practical economic reality of being a tenant as opposed to being an owner. And it remains to be seen what this temporary stadium that they have in Fort Lauderdale is going to be going forward. And, the new, not just stadium, but the new development that's going to be around the stadium in Miami, that's going to be a whole nother level. Also remains to be seen what they look like without Messi. This stadium is scheduled right now to be ready in 2026. And I love the fact that Inter Miami has said, you know what? We're going to use 2026. I talk about it all the time. It's going to come and go. But if you use it correctly, and if you are opening your stadium in 2026, the year of the Men's World Cup being played, oh, by the way, not only in Miami, but also with Argentina and hopefully with Messi there defending his World Cup championship, that's a lot going on at the same time in a good way, synergy and all that kind of stuff. So congratulations. I hope that they get the construction done so that it does arrive in 2026, and I think that would be a home run, if you will.
I was thinking about this. Boy, it's happened again with David Beckham. As a player in MLS, got off to a bad start. You know, Grant Wall wrote the book. Everybody was acting like it was an irredeemable failure. What went wrong? And then he wins back-to-back MLS Cups and in the end completely changes the narrative about his time as a player here. And then as an owner, too, remember, things got off to a rough start at Inter Miami.
Yep.
Bad results on the field. Couldn't get the stadium built. Couldn't attract big stars. People were wondering if this whole David Beckham ownership thing been overhyped. And yet here we are. He's got Messi. They're winning trophies. He's got the stadium on the way. To your point, if they get it built by 2026, that's going to be an incredible scene there. So
the pink branding, awesome. Awesome.
The lesson here is don't proclaim anything David Beckham is involved in a failure until you know for sure, because things seem to go that man's way. He's kind of a winner. You know, when you look the way he does, clearly he has God on his side. So things tend to work out for him.
All right. Anything else, Mosse, here?
That's it.
All right, let's take another quick break. When we come back, we'll finish up the show with one for the road. Okay, welcome back. It's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. I mentioned at the top of the show that I binged on a bunch of different docs, including the Hope Solo documentary over there on Netflix called Hope Solo versus U.S. Soccer. Now, admittedly, for those of us that have been around soccer for a long time, we know a whole lot about the Hope Solo story. And you're not learning necessarily anything new. However, I think that this documentary, for those that don't know a whole lot about Hope Solo, will be illuminating in terms of her incredibly interesting and emotional backstory and where she came from. And yet, I find myself after this documentary thinking, you know, Hope, you are one of the greatest ever to play the game. And I have many times said before, and including in this documentary, you hear me say it, that I think Hope Solo, for what she did for the position of goalkeeping relative to an American, I can argue that she is the greatest American soccer player ever. Okay? Bar none, she was the greatest women's goalkeeper at the time that she was playing. Okay? And show me a men's player that has done that with the position that they play, where they are globally recognized as far and away the best player in that position. And I also say, and you'll hear it in this documentary too, you don't have to like Hope Solo. You don't have to want to hang out with Hope Solo, but I want her on my team because she saves the ball. And I think throughout this documentary, what I'm left with is that, you know, and she goes through all her fight with the United States Soccer Federation. And I think it's telling that not a single one of her teammates participated in this documentary. And what I found myself being almost sad at was that Hope Solo continues to feel like the world has been against her. The world is against her. And going forward, the world will continue to be against her. And again, I find that sad that she kind of perpetuates this and lives this. And you see it in this documentary. And she raises her hand and is very honest about mistakes she has made in the past. And they go through all of that. And again, it's interesting and I guess, for lack of a better word, entertaining in the documentary. But I hope that Hope Solo goes forward and has a wonderfully productive life and is, you know, happy and healthy going forward. And I just believe that American soccer is not against Hope Solo. Okay? I really don't believe that American soccer is against Hope Solo. And I hope she comes to that realization at some point, because I think that she'll find that American soccer and American people in soccer, they will have a lot of love for her and certainly a lot of respect. And not just for what she has done on the field, but she is ultimately an incredible fighter. And just there's a huge, huge chip on her shoulder. And I don't know if it's ever going to go away. And maybe that's what made her great. But she's not kicking a ball anymore. So at some point, you got to let that go. And I know it's hard for her in the way that she sees things and the way that she feels things. And it's easy for me to tell her to let that go. But until she does, it's just going to be hard. And again, it makes me more sad than anything else when I watch it.
To bring this pod back full circle, who is a more sympathetic character, Hope Solo or Michigan staffer Connor Stallions at the center of the controversy?
Hope Solo, at least she's real, okay? I didn't feel like I was watching a mockumentary. She is real, and she is raw, and she is authentic. But when it comes to Connor Stallion or whatever, I still think that this is just an elaborate mockumentary, like I said, ultimately. So we'll see. Anything else before we go, Mosse?
I just want to note, we had Sean Sullivan producing today and John Marcus directing, and we've previously worked with Kyla and Aaron, so we can test Landon Donovan's women are easier to work with than men theory, which he espoused on during his interview with us. That was one of many Landon comments that got a lot of play in social media.
I told you he brought it, and again, if you haven't listened to it, go back. It's really, really interesting in the way that he talks about soccer on the field, soccer off the field, and just life in general. So a true legend. And when it comes to bringing the content, he does it. All right. Keep reviewing, keep downloading, keep subscribing. Oh, speaking of subscriptions, Mosse. Oh my goodness, over there on the old, what do we call it? The YouTube machine. Keep pounding it, keep smashing that button two-handed like this. Okay. And keep punching the button over there on Spotify and all the different platforms out there. We really appreciate it. We're so happy and thankful that so many people are tuning in. Speaking of tuning in, have a wonderful weekend. Again, we will be live after the U.S. plays this weekend over there on the X machine, but it'll show up in your feed. But join us live. Come on over and hang out and hear what we have to say after the first game in the post-Greg Berhalter era occurs this weekend on Saturday. But until then, and as always, my friends, size the den.